I would love to meet in Moscow. And I said, I don't think, I have to put myself in his position. I don't know that he'd go to Moscow. Maybe he would. Would you go to Moscow?
It's difficult. There are a lot of Ukrainian drones there. That's right. It's dangerous.
He doesn't want to be hit by a drone.
All right, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky cracking a joke after President Trump put him on the spot there. Well done.
May have been a joke, but it's funny because it's true, Willie. I mean, it is for years, the Trump administration and people around Trump have been lying about Ukraine, lying about Russia, saying that Russia was going to win the war, that Ukraine. I mean, I literally heard it every week from them. This war's almost over. Ukraine's going to lose. Yesterday, we finally saw what Ukraine has known for quite some time. They're winning this war. Intel out of Russia suggests maybe economically it's close to being over. I don't think it's close to being over, but man, Russia is in serious trouble right now. And it seems that Donald Trump, who loves winners and hates losers, understands this as well as anybody.
Yeah,
fine.
That was a really striking moment yesterday. Zelensky that quickly saying, well, I wouldn't go there because it's not safe because of the offensive position that we, Ukraine, have now taken. And we've got drones swarming around Moscow at will. And interesting, too, to watch yesterday. The president, now, again, it may change today, but the president's, at least his tone shifting as he sat next to Zelensky, his tone shifting when he talked about the war in Ukraine. He called Ukraine, quote, ingenious in the way that they've developed these drones and prosecuted this war over the last several years, and then talked about allowing them to produce weapons, defensive weapons, Patriot missiles, things like that, long on the list of requests from Ukraine. So, again, was it a moment in time? We'll see. But at least yesterday, the president of the United States, really a tone shift in terms of Ukraine and Zelensky.
Yeah, we'll get to more on that very significant shift in just a moment. We'll also bring you the latest on the strikes across the Middle East overnight, coming after President Trump told reporters the ceasefire was over. So good morning and welcome to Morning Joe. It is Thursday, July 9th. We have a lot of news this morning along with Joe, Willie, and me. We've got the co-host of our 8 a.m. hour, staff writer at The Atlantic, Jonathan Lemire. Co-host of the Rest is Politics podcast, the BBC's Katty Kay is with us. And co-host of The Weekend, Washington reporter for MS Now, Jackie Alamany, doing way too early duty for us this morning. Thank you very much.
Way too early, way too well. Making us all look bad.
Yes.
Jackie does. And Katty Kay hanging out. With the stars at Wimbledon. Katty, it's really, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you stand the strain of being so beloved on both sides of the pond.
Oh, God, so bad. It was such a good day. I was invited to the Royal Box at Wimbledon. I watched the Novak Djokovic match. It went on for 5 hours. Can you imagine? He's, what, 40-odd? I was exhausted watching. I had to go and get a cream tea in the middle just to give myself a little bit of sustenance. And then I realised that he was still paying. I mean, 5 hours of tennis and slamming that ball. Anyway, it was a great day.
A great day. I would not have been watching tennis because you had Sherlock sitting just to the right of you.
Benedict
and
Cumberbatch.
the mooch.
And the mooch came over, yeah.
Wow.
It was
He's
just
there,
a very
and the
good
mooch.
day.
Two of the biggest stars on planet Earth. And before we get to our lead story, I've got to say,
Don't go to his head,
Lemire,
please. That's,
exactly. And he's usually so quiet and retiring, so this would be quite a change for the mooch. But I've got to say, Lemire, a lot of big news coming out of New England, a lot of huge earth-shattering news. I speak, of course, of your Boston Red Sox, now 3 games out of the playoffs.
Surging Boston Red Sox. Joe, it's a good thing you and I never lost faith in this team.
Never once.
We have been there from opening day.
We believed.
Unwavering confidence that Craig Breslow and the big spending ownership would put together this roster. Yeah, they're playing better. They swept the Yankees 2 weekends ago. They then just swept the Angels over the weekend. They've won 2 in a row against the first-place White Sox. And because the American League is so bad this year, we are still in the mix. Maybe that changes their calculus at the trade deadline. But at the very least, it's nice to see them finally play some good baseball. And the pitching's been terrific.
Yeah. I used to say, again, American League's so bad, I would usually say, well, we may end up being the tallest building in Schenectady. I think I'm going to change this one to the tallest building in Utica.
Okay.
We'll take whatever we can take.
Okay, we will get to the news now. We have a lot to get to, including the top political story this morning. Democrat Graham Plattner has suspended his campaign for U.S. Senate in Maine after days of intense political pressure to drop out of the race ahead of Monday's ballot deadline. His candidacy was thrown into chaos earlier this week after a former girlfriend accused him in the media of sexually assaulting her years ago. Plattner has denied those allegations, but the controversy led to a number of top Democrats pulling their endorsements and a mass exodus of voter support. Here's part of the 11-minute social media video that the embattled candidate posted last night.
I think, as many of you know, over the past couple days, I have faced some very serious allegations, and I just want to make it clear, this is all false. The things that have been claimed did not happen. It's not real. There is a reason that this is happening now. I only have until July 13th until I am officially the nominee. This was the last week to try to get me off of the ballot. And that's why this is occurring. It's not the false allegations, though, that have brought us to where we are. It's the fact that they are being used by the political establishment to put structural pressure on us. We live in a political system that is not built for normal people. It is a system that is built structurally to make sure that movements like ours cannot flourish. That if they begin to succeed, they can be crushed. We are suspending campaign operations. This is incredibly difficult because I know that some will think it's an admission of guilt, and it most certainly is not. We're not doing it because of the allegations. We're doing it because of the structures that are being taken away from us by those in power.
Okay.
All right. Well, Maine has less than 3 weeks to find a new nominee. State law requires nominees be selected by the fourth Monday in July. Plattner addressed the replacement process in his announcement, warning that Washington Democrats should not get a say in this.
What comes next needs to come from the people. Needs to come from the people of Maine. Needs to come from the voters who on June 9th, at a strength of over 150,000, the largest number in the history of Maine primaries, said no to this kind of politics. I'm not trying to dictate to anyone who it should be or how we get there, but I will say this. It needs to be open, transparent, and democratic. People in D.C. need to stay in D.C.
So, Willie, a couple things. First of all, he denied these charges as clearly and as strongly as you can deny these charges. Got to say, it's fascinating that there are people in the media, people that we know, that are just summarily calling him a rapist now. For Republicans listening, this is something that Mika and I also said about Brett Kavanaugh. Saying that people would come on this network and call Brett Kavanaugh a sexual harasser or a rapist without any due process at all. Perhaps they needed to take a deep breath. That said, regardless of how this was going to play out, the Democratic Party said, we're not going to support you. They weren't going to fund him, so he had no pathway forward. I just want to say, Willie, I mean, Republicans that are spending their time on Fox News and social media, outraged that Democrats would dare support a candidate who was accused of sexual impropriety, even when that candidate vehemently denied that. That is beyond hypocritical. that is just sheer farce. This is even beyond South Park levels of farce. What I am reading on X, what I am reading in social media, what I am seeing on TV after the past decade. And by the way, if you want to talk about morally challenged candidates, you don't have to look at the White House. You don't have to look at Republicans bowing and scraping for the past decade. Just look at Texas. Look at who Republicans are behind as they're trying to suggest that Tallarico is gay. Well, look at Paxton. He's not. I mean, the hypocrisy. Republicans should just really just shut up. They really should just shut up if they're going to be critical of Democrats for supporting a morally challenged candidate or one who's been accused of doing things that are morally challenged. It is so hypocritical, Willie, and they should just leave this to the Democrats to clean up their own house.
Yeah, you've had prominent Republicans, including the former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, coming out and saying Republicans walk away from candidates with troubling past that include sexual allegations of sexual assault. I mean, come on. I guess they're just hoping that people have such short memories or are too dumb to remember or see in front of them what's happening. So you're totally right about that. They've surrendered the moral high ground a long time ago. So we'll thank them to have a seat in this conversation. But the larger question here, Jackie Alemany, as we listen to Graham Plattner defiantly in that statement yesterday saying, these allegations are false, but I cannot move forward because the rug has been pulled out from under me, despite the fact that I won 72% of the primary vote, despite the fact that Maine Democrats, with all these other allegations out there, said they still wanted me to be the nominee. I can't go forward because people in Washington, let's say, for example, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, led by Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand, said, we're not funding your campaign. We're not giving you voter data. We're not going to help you at all. He's saying, I can't move forward. I want to move forward, but I cannot. So now the question will be, how much say does he have in this convention for next 2.5 weeks that Maine Democrats are scrambling to put together to find a new candidate? How much say will he have, or his movement have, in who the candidate is? He believes it should look like someone like him in his progressive values.
Yeah, and last night was the most public display that we have seen since the Politico article came out about this allegation of sexual assault of Graham Plattner, trying to exert some leverage here and have a say in tapping his replacement. I think the thing that he's going to run into, the problem that he's going to run into, is one, this obvious deadline, but two, it's also the lack of institutional support from not the establishment, but his own Mainers, his own supporters. I mean, we have had a bunch of reporters who have been on the ground in Maine over the last few weeks. Kevin Fry has been there all week, who are hearing that for voters, they have sort of crossed the Rubicon here. This has been sort of one infraction too many, with this obviously being the most serious of a lot of these allegations. But as we walked through yesterday, from the allegations, from the stories about his Nazi tattoo, to all of these Reddit posts, to then allegations of infidelity, sexting, to now this sexual assault allegation, there is a trust deficit that has emerged amongst voters. It might not have appeared in the polling just yet, but I'm not sure that Graham Plattner has as much leverage as he thinks he does. And in the process, he is making, again, not just establishment Democrats, but other Democrats even angrier, because he is poisoning the well going forward. He is not necessarily setting up his replacement for success.
It's just funny because for that list that Jackie just made, I mean, for some Republicans, that's just a Tuesday, but whatever. There are so many hypocrisies here that we could go through, but that's not constructive. I'm curious, Katty Kay, what's your gut on how this went down, especially as it pertains to the media and the Democratic Party?
Look, it's really interesting, Mika. I know I've told you my son is living in Rockland, Maine at the moment, and I've been talking to him about, he's been to see Graham Plattner campaign. He's been excited about his campaign, and I've been talking to him on and off during the course of the last few weeks. I was up there with him a week ago, and he represents, I think, the view of many kind of younger Mainers who are saying this is the Democratic Party establishment's fault, and that they are kind of blaming Washington for these stories. Now, Whether this has taken it one step further than that will be interesting to see. Do we start seeing all of those Plattner signs that are all over kind of the more liberal areas of Maine? Do they start to come down now? There had been polls showing that he was weak in support with working class Maine voters, more than he was with college-educated Maine voters. But it's interesting the degree to which Plattner himself and many of his followers are saying this is a story that has come out of Washington, and we don't know that we trust Washington, so we don't know that we trust the story. Now, as Jackie says, you can run through that list. I mean, there are now multiple allegations, and I think we have always thought when there is a pattern, you take these things more seriously than when there is just one allegation. But for many people who've supported Plattner, I think they are still thinking this is about the Democratic Party, and that's why they liked Plattner in the first place, because he wasn't out of Washington and he didn't represent the establishment.
Right. Yeah, and Jonathan Lemire, a couple of things. First of all, on all of these allegations, except the last one, Democrats in Maine knew about that. They gave Plattner about 75% of the vote. I think he got more votes in a primary than anybody else. So, again, and it's so rich, Republicans who've basically been telling us for 10 years, there are no consequences to personal failings, personal faults. Suddenly, they've become Jim and Tammy Faye Baker. They are shocked and stunned and deeply saddened. Jesus wouldn't approve of this. And yet, what have they been doing for 10 years? What? What has their Texas candidate been doing his entire political life? The self-righteousness. Oh, they should be so ashamed. But you know they aren't, because they haven't been for 10 years. When you have somebody like Kevin McCarthy that can go on the floor after January the 6th and blame a riot, an insurrection, an attempt to overthrow an American election on Donald Trump, and then get on Fox News and go, well, we Republicans, if somebody does anything wrong, I don't know why I'm doing Lindsey Graham, it just comes natural. We get rid of them. It's kind of, that was more of a Lindsey Graham than, I don't think I can do Central California. Let me work on that. But I will say this, and this is just a word of warning to Democrats in Washington, D.C. Graham Plattner was losing support with independents, no doubt about it. But I will tell you, Meek and I have heard nothing. Let me underline that. Nothing but support from Maine Democrats on the ground for Plattner. Plattner signs are still up. They think that this is Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and the Washington establishment coming to get him. They all have the same story. They started hearing 10 days ago that people were coming up to Maine and they were desperate to try to get Plattner off the ballot because they thought Susan Collins had too much on him and would destroy him. I will tell you, without revealing any names, that we have been bombarded by phone calls and text messages from people who want Graham Plattner off the ballot, who are high up in Maine politics, and we've been getting that for the last 2 weeks. So, why do I say this? Because there's a conspiracy? No, not at all. Go back to what I said at the beginning. A warning to Washington Democrats. You do need to listen to Graham Plattner, because whether it's true or not, just as Kathy said about her son who has been working on this campaign, rank and file Democrats who have been supporting Plattner from the very beginning think that this was cooked up in Washington, D.C. with a lot of money behind it to find anything that could be found to get Graham Plattner off the ballot. And I will say, we know nothing about that. Meek and I have been scratching our heads for the last couple of weeks going, why are we getting all these calls about Graham Plattner needing to be off the ballot?
73-year-old woman who is just
constant calls. So anyway, that's what Democrats on the ground in Maine believe. So Washington needs to stay out of this, and Maine Democrats need to figure out who is going to replace Graham Plattner
Soon.
on the ballot. And if Washington thinks they can micromanage this and fix this, they need to listen to what Caddy's son said, because they're going to piss off their base, and their base won't come out and vote in the general election. They just won't.
Yeah, we should not underestimate the excitement that Plattner instilled in people, including voters who had told reporters in Maine they hadn't voted in a while, but they found a connection with him. He, for all of his flaws, and there are obviously many, he was a charismatic, a talented political athlete. People were drawn to him, and his messaging worked, and it's reflective, and we've seen this across the country right now. There's sort of not a civil war, but a real debate in the Democratic Party and about which direction to go. And there's real energy on the progressive side, the anti-establishment side. We saw it in Colorado. We've seen it in New York. We've seen it in other races, saying we're tired of same old, same old. Some of it is about age and generation, but some of it is about charisma and energy and speaking to the issues that matter to voters, like charging up new voters, progressive voters. And there are some Democrats very nervous about that. And certainly, you're right. I received a lot of these same concerns. There was institutional opposition to Plattner within the Democratic Party. Now, some of that is because they feared other scandals were coming, and obviously that ended up being correct. But there was more to it, and there really is a Washington feels very isolated from the rest of the Democratic Party throughout the rest of the country right now. And I think as Maine looks to replace Plattner, they're going to have to be careful, to your point, because they risk losing some voters. That if they think that the next nominee is just sort of handpicked from D.C. or someone who doesn't resemble Plattner at all, there's a chance Plattner will lose some of that support when Susan Collins does appear vulnerable at a moment when Democrats at least look like they've got a real chance for a wave this November.
See that happening.
Washington was scared. Washington was scared, and again, this has nothing to do with the allegations and whether they're true or not. And again, that is something that, over time, people can sort through everything and figure it out. I will tell you, though, in all my years in politics, I have never once, when a candidate won a primary overwhelmingly, I've never once seen in a Senate race or a congressional race, I've never had people calling, I've never had people like 10 days, 2 weeks out, basically saying, we're going to try to get him off the ballot. We're like sending people up to Maine and basically we're going to go through all of Maine because we think there's more and we're going to find more. And we have 2 weeks or we have 10 days, we have 8 days to get him off the ballot. That's what they were saying before these allegations came out. Well, he's off the ballot. So if we've been hearing this as outsiders, imagine what Democrats on the ground in Maine have been hearing. So we'll see what happens.
We'll revisit this soon.
We'll revisit it soon,
we'll
yeah.
Get to more, because I do have some reflections on the allegations from Maine voters. Jackie Alemany, thank you very much for coming on this morning. We'll see you soon. And still ahead on Morning Joe, the latest on the growing tensions in the Middle East as the United States and Tehran trade new strikes overnight.
An 11 missile shot by the Islamic Republic of Japan. They were shot at the aircraft carrier over a period of about 1 hour. 111 missiles going to a very expensive ship, and every one of those missiles was knocked down.
That's the president yesterday with the slip of the tongue, mixing up Iran with Japan. Let me tell you, Willie, I am not the best man to cast stones at somebody who mixes things up, especially after a transatlantic flight. I mean, I still, about every 3 times I'm talking about Macron, I call him Mitterrand. When poor Jack Scarborough has to watch me watching the Red Sox at night, I'll be sitting there and we'll be talking. I go, who's that guy that hit the home? He'll go, Ortiz. Oh, yeah. And we had that kid reminds me of that. Who's that left hand? Ted Williams. Yeah, Ted Williams. It really is torture for. But so I'm not going to criticize anybody who has a slip of the tongue like that again, especially after not getting sleep. That said,
here we go again.
If Joe Biden had said that, oh my God. the world would come to an end. We would be like, they would say, put
Be on a loop
electrodes up to his
other
brain
networks.
right now, because obviously the 25th Amendment must be put into effect at once. The double standard, I got to bite my tongue
Every
because
story we cover.
because I want to say something, but I'm not going to say something, but I cannot wait for certain people to write books about how we knew all along. We knew all along he was demented. We knew all along. And how could we have just sat there and sat back and said nothing? It happens. It happens. But we can say that. But the Republicans can never say that about Joe Biden.
No, and you could make that point several times per day if you listen to the remarks that the president gives, the long speeches he gives, the rants he goes on, the rambling. You know, a slip of the tongue, Japan, Iran. He called President Zelensky, President Putin yesterday. You know, it happens in the course of a day, I guess. But you're right. The side-by-side, the comparison, and the moniker of Sleepy Joe for a president who often falls asleep in public. You can do this all day if you want to. But there are weightier issues because the war with Iran has stepped up again. The United States, again, launching strikes across Iran last night, just hours after President Trump said he believed the ceasefire is over. U.S. Central Command says it hit 90 targets, including missile and drone sites near the Strait of Hormuz, in an effort to further degrade Iran's ability to threaten shipping in that key waterway. Iranian state media and the IRGC also reported strikes on bridges in the country, which would be the first attacks of its kind from the United States since April. Iran's health ministry says the 2 days of U.S. strikes now have killed at least 14 people and wounded dozens more. President Trump called yesterday's strikes retribution for Iran's attacks on commercial vessels, warning on social media, if it happens again, it will get much worse. Iran hit back, attacking U.S. bases in Kuwait and Bahrain for a second night, with the country's parliamentary speaker and top negotiator issuing the warning to U.S., quote, if you strike, you'll get hit. As tensions and rhetoric ramp up again, President Trump was asked yesterday why his opinion of Iran's leaders seemed to have changed.
Last month, you said Iranian leaders were very rational people, nice people to deal with, strong people, smart people. Today, you said they were scum, sick people, and being led by sick people. What changed, and do you think
I got to know them. So I've said that about a lot. Now, when you say rational, I think they're much more rational than level 1, level 2. Level 1 is gone, level 2 is gone. This is level 3. I think they are more rational, but based on their actions over the last week or two, they're not doing a service to the people. And I think more than anything else is I got to know them. And I'm not sure I want to make a deal with them. We can play games, but I'm not sure I want to make a deal. Let's just finish the job.
Join us now, decorated combat veteran, former commander of U.S. Army Europe, retired Army Lieutenant General Mark Hertling. He is an MS Now military analyst. General, great to have you with us as always. So that flimsy memorandum of understanding has proven to be quite that flimsy over the last couple of weeks and now seems to have fallen apart. No negotiations. President Trump suggesting yesterday that Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff should just come home. It's a waste of time, he says, to talk to the Iranians, who he's now calling scum. What do you make of these new attacks by the United States and the attacks from Iran, which, again, go to American bases and threaten neighbors and allies of the United States in the Gulf?
Well, Willie, it gets back to the point you made at the very beginning, that it is not a ceasefire. It is a memorandum of understanding to start discussions. And there haven't been a whole lot of meat put on that bone of that agenda of the memorandum of understanding. So when ships started moving through the strait again, which Iran said they wanted to talk about during the meetings that would be held as a result of the memorandum of understanding, they were violating what Iran believes is their territory. So it is just, when the president says we're just going to bring people home, and when he again says, hey, these people are scum and we don't want to deal with them, it's only digging the hole deeper. All wars end in some type of diplomatic measure, and if you don't have the capability to talk and get something accomplished, military force is not going to provide any kind of relief from the kinds of issues we've been seeing over the last 4 months or so.
So General Hertling, I co-wrote a piece for The Atlantic on this that came out last night. And in it, we quote a Middle East expert who fears that these two countries may, quote, sleepwalk our way back to war, that it's going to be this like low-level tit-for-tat and, escalation or then retaliation, and it will grow back into more open hostilities. Now, President Trump, as we have seen so often, doesn't really want to do that. Even yesterday, even after authorizing these 2 nights of strikes, made clear, like, well, this could be over quickly. He made sure to say that he wants his negotiators to keep talking. But as long as the Strait of Hormuz is in Iran's hands, and this is where I want you to weigh in, it seems like fundamentally there can't be an agreement, because as we report in the story, the White House nearly every day is getting calls from their allies in the Gulf, the other states there, who frankly have taken the brunt of Iran's attacks, who simply say it is unacceptable for us to pay tolls to use the Strait of Hormuz. We're not going to refill Iran's coffers after they've pummeled us for weeks.
Yeah, the issue hasn't been addressed, Jonathan, and I've read your piece. It's very good. And it goes back to the point that this is asymmetric warfare. Military activities by both sides. And by the way, the president still refuses to call this a war. And by very definition of what a war is, armed conflict between opposing parties, this is a war. It's not a military operation or a denuclearization, as he said in the press conference yesterday. When you have these kinds of things going on without adequate discussions and through diplomacy, Iran has the upper hand in both information and economics, 2 of the powers of any nation. So if they control the strait and there are no ships willing to go through because of insurance purposes, they have the advantage. Let's just put it that way. And the president just returning to strikes is just more of the same. And you're looking to execute military operations to try and get to an objective. The objective hasn't been defined. The president's all over the map still on what the end state requirement is. He said yesterday it was denuclearization, and then proceeded to say that all the nuclear dust was buried underground and Iran could never get to it. It is all about economics right now. And, you have to solve that through diplomatic talks, and that's not happening.
All right, General, if you could stand by and everybody stay right there. After a break, we're going to move to Ukraine and another major shift in that war. We'll be right back.
It's unbelievable. Circumstances have and will arise which are